In this video, I am going to be analyzing the astrology of Donald Trump by reading his natal chart. I don't want this video to come off as a political or biased video. I simply want to read the astrology. Also, I decided to use the Placidus house system instead of the whole sign house system because I felt the Placidus was much more accurate. And I think that's because Donald Trump's rising is at 29 degrees of Leo. So the first house may as well start with Virgo instead of Leo, simply because the rising sign is so late. The most obvious and overstated part of Trump's chart is his Leo rising conjunct Regulus. Trump embodies the Leo rising energy in the most complete and utter way. His ability to draw attention, his strong and bold presence, and the attention to his hair are all common Leo rising traits. The conjunction to Regulus, which is the kingly star of astrology, only enhances these Leo traits and bestows great gifts and honors. Having one's rising conjunct Regulus is an extremely lucky placement. An astrologer, without knowing anything about Donald Trump, if they just read his chart, they would likely guess that he would become a famous, prominent leader or an incredibly wealthy individual from just looking at this one placement alone. Trump also has an orange aura or complexion to him. This can be seen from his Mars conjunct the ascendant. Mars is literally the orange planet and can give an orange physical presence, as we can clearly see. Trump also comes off as a bully or a jerk. Leo risings themselves can be this way, but Mars really strengthens this aggressive energy. Essentially, just by looking at this one placement, one can clearly see that Trump is a tough and powerful figure. He is a bigger-than-life alpha male, a modern monarch of our age. Looking at his chart in general, most of his planets are in masculine signs, and all planets but the moon are in the left side of his chart. Planets on the left side of the chart give a more me or leader-like personality. Planets in masculine signs make people more outgoing and risky. Not to mention, many planets are in the top left part of his chart, especially the sun, which is extremely common among celebrities or famous people. Speaking of the sun sign, the sun is the ruler of Trump's chart because he is a Leo rising. His sun is in Gemini and in the 10th house or 11th house, depending on the house system that you use, and also conjunct the North Node and Uranus. Firstly, having sun in Gemini is kind of like a business placement. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, which is the planet of trading and merchants. So in one aspect, the Gemini sun represents Trump's affinity for business. Gemini also has a lot to do with overspeaking and communication. However, with the sun conjunct the North Node, this can make someone quite powerful or egotistical. Even though I already said that, this placement boosts his power even more, since the North Node increases or kicks into overdrive whatever it touches. Since the sun represents one's vitality and life essence, and given that Trump is already quite prominent, as we've explained earlier with his rising, it points to a powerful and charismatic personality. On the opposite end of his chart, the moon is conjunct the South Node in Sagittarius, so his reflective and passive nature is taking a backseat. Considering that Sagittarius is a more philosophical kind of sign, and that Gemini is a more trivial sign, Trump is going to be focused on pragmatic conversation as opposed to wanderlust principles. He's a day-to-day kind of guy, a pragmatist. The sun conjunct Uranus points to chaos and instability. I imagine that Trump's life represents a shock or change wherever he goes. When he entered politics, he uprooted a lot of ideas and way of doing things. He was the first businessman to become president as opposed to a politician. He couldn't be bought like a politician since he was richer than all of the politicians. And given that the North Node represents changes or shifts of energy like Uranus, I think Trump's presidency marks a transition in politics and probably many things regarding businesses that he engaged in the past, or luck in all of his endeavors. Furthermore, he's got Jupiter in Libra trine his sun. Jupiter blows up or exaggerates planets at aspects. Although this is a trine, so this is a positive aspect, given how powerful his chart is, it can seem like he is a little bit too overconfident and egotistical, which Jupiter can do if it trines the sun. He does have Jupiter in the 2nd house, which is great for making money. He's confident in making money. His money brings him confidence. It's a nice harmonious placement. Finally, and I find this to be quite interesting, is that he has Saturn and Venus both conjunct in Cancer. This aspect sheds light on many things. First of all, the aspects I have mentioned already would likely point to simply a powerful figure. and a figure that creates lots of change in authority positions. But this Venus-Saturn aspect points to a deep insecurity. This likely gives rise to Trump's narcissism because he pays way too much attention to the affection and attention from others. Venus represents our relationships, how we relate to people, how we enjoy and experience pleasure. Saturn represents limitation, restrictions, and lessons. Given that these planets fall in Cancer, Trump gains pleasure and relates to people in a Cancerian way. Cancer is a watery, mushy, overly emotional sign, so Trump has a deep capacity for love. But Saturn is at its detriment in Cancer, and because it's conjunct Venus, this detriment is restricting and limiting the mushy and emotional energy of Cancer. It's trying to regulate and control emotions. It's trying to regulate and control Trump's relationships. But emotions and Cancer energy is supposed to be free and open. It's supposed to be vulnerable. So Trump has a deep capacity for love and pleasure, but with Saturn here, it can point to a sense of not getting enough love or affection. He's too controlling, demanding, or overly appeasing for it, which can lead to narcissism, as I've already said. There's this sense of wanting to be safe with emotions, but also wanting them deeply, and taking them very, very seriously, taking them so seriously that it creates fear and anxiety. The problem with this placement is that you either have to take a risk and be okay with rejection, but rejections can hurt because you take these rejections so seriously, or you can take no risks at all, and you don't really have to be vulnerable in love, but then again, you will be in control and be powerful in your relationships. So this is the problem that Trump has had to deal with for basically his entire life. Earlier, I said Jupiter made a trine to Trump's sun. Well, Jupiter makes a square to the Venus-Saturn aspect. A square is a negative aspect, and given that the square is between Cancer and Libra, this can make for an overly dependent and a weak energy, because Libra is all about relationships, and Cancer is all about being vulnerable. So this is a very vulnerable position in relationships. Trump may come off as a very strong and powerful and domineering figure, but there's a side of him that is kind of weak, because he is desperate for safe and intimate relationships, and he wants to be sure that there is no chance of rejection or loss. In many ways, he rejects people or puts people down before they have a chance to put him down, so he doesn't have to worry about other people's thoughts and opinions of him. And given that Jupiter is in his second house, maybe he uses money or self-worth to control his relationships. He uses money to get love, or maybe his relationships are only being moved by money, and only money has influence in his relationships. And since this conjunction takes place in the 11th house, I feel like a lot of this relationship energy is taking place at like business parties, social gatherings, and other large groups of people like the public in general. That's the most important stuff that I found in Donald Trump's natal chart, and thanks for watching.